Hello, you just tuned into the show Law Express, a social service program aimed at not making lawyers out of you, but getting you to understand where your rights accrue and what you could do when you get offended. My name is Nuhela. I'll be right back after this commercial break, where I shall introduce to you our guest for today to discuss the topic breach of promise to marry and all the incidents that surround that topic. We'll be right back. So they met at school, they fell in love, they started dating. After school, the lady lands a good job. The man unfortunately does not get one just yet.
I met Kweku in school. It was love at first sight. We were so excited about each other, we decided to date. We fell in love with each other so much that I could swear he's the best thing that happened to me. After school, I got myself a job. The salary was good. For some time, he was jobless, so I decided to support him with his daily upkeep. That wasn't a problem to me because I loved him so much. 2 years down the lane, he was still jobless. He one day sat me down and said he wanted to go back to school to pursue his master's degree. But then he will need support from me. I didn't really see it as a big deal because he was my man. I decided to help, and that is to finance his education.
In gratitude, promises her marriage. She's touched and she decides to sponsor him through further education. After he's done with his master's program, he comes back home and he decides that they get married. But first, he suggests that they move in together. Since he still doesn't have money, the lady pays for an apartment for them to move in together. At this point, he lands a job, which does not pay as much as the woman's. But then he decides to follow through with what he said earlier. So he moves with his family to the woman's family to introduce themselves and then to let them know about their intention to take her hand in marriage.
Finally, I was going to settle down with the man of my life. After that, I took him to my church to meet my pastor. We were given a date for our wedding. Then we started counseling. One Saturday, I was in the house when a cousin rushed in that I go accompany her somewhere. I was a bit reluctant, but then when she mentioned it was a wedding, I saw it as an opportunity to get ideas for my own wedding, my upcoming wedding. So I went with her, and on getting there, oh my God, what was happening? I couldn't believe it was my own Kweku, the man I've given my heart to, my love, my time, my emotions, my soul, everything. Already married to another woman and about to do their first dance.
She collapses and then comes to us. Her question is, what is available for her to compensate her for the lost time, the lost emotions, and all that she has put into a relationship with a man who clearly was not interested in following through on his promise to marry her. This is Law Express. With me today to discuss the topic breach of promise to marry are two outstanding lawyers. To my immediate left is lawyer Apang Lamtig, who is a private legal practitioner. Not too far from him is Mrs. Fredricka Obeng, who is also a legal practitioner. She's a law lecturer and the author of a wonderful book, Contemporary Principles of Family Law in Ghana. Lady and gentlemen of the bar, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this is a situation that confronts us on a day-to-day basis. I mean, it's so common and yet so not litigated. I mean, very few people actually come up to the law to see what they could get out of situations like that.
Principle of a breach of promise, really, to marry,
was inherited by Ghana from England, you know, through the common law. But for some reason, or whatever reasons, it looks as if it's not very popular here in Ghana, because if you look at the cases, you come across just a very small number of cases based on breach of promise to marry. And then I guess one would wonder what the rationale is, you know. But I think that the whole purpose is for an individual, be it a man or a woman, who has been disappointed vis-a-vis marriage, to be given the opportunity to approach the court for some kind of redress.
By rationale, I take it that you mean what the purpose of the law is.
Exactly, exactly. Yes.
And to even add on what my learned senior have said, the essence of the law is to provide an opportunity for persons who have suffered as a result of monies or resources devoted towards marriage, and for one reason or the other, the marriage didn't come on. What options do they have? What rights can they exercise under such circumstance? And that was the whole essence of this principle of the law known as the breach of promise to marry.
I also look at it from the angle of invested emotions, and in as much as we can quantify what is due you after you've invested emotions, this also is, you know, an opportunity for you to feel a bit compensated after you've put in so much of yourself into a situation or a relationship, and then it turns out, you know, unfruitful. Essentially, breach of promise to marry is therefore a hand-me-down from the common law. We'll go for a quick commercial break to acknowledge our sponsors. When we come back, we're going to talk to random people on the street to find out what they know about the topic breach of promise to marry generally, and what they would do if they come into a situation of that nature. Stay tuned, we'll be right back after this commercial break. What should I know if I want to buy, lease, or rent property? Get married or divorced? Draft a will, enter into a partnership or contract? What should I know if I've been arrested, abused, defamed, wrongfully dismissed from work? Let's get informed. Let's get liberated. Let's get empowered. Law Express, showing this on every Sunday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on Metro TV.
Just have to let it go and move on. It has happened. Sometimes you just learn from your mistakes and you move ahead.
For me, if you do that to me, I'll curse you.
I'll take all of those back, everything invested with interest. Here I didn't know, but you're making me aware. But I think that anybody who goes through that deserves some amount of compensation or redress, because investing time, resources into a relationship, you'll never know, can take a lot.
Once I've given it to her wholeheartedly, at the time of us being in a relationship, it's hers. Whatever happens after that, well, I leave it to God, but I will not be seeking to get it back.
I will find the reason why she made that decision, and if it is not my fault, then I will let her go, because then I think she's not the right person for me.
I would cry, but I believe that love should be two sides. So if he has failed his part of his promise, I'll let him go.
I'll just let it go, because there are chances missed in life. There'll probably be another chance for me, and even maybe a better one. So this could just probably go.
I think the person should pray I don't own a gun.
Acid baby. Me acid no me acid no de be kwa no fa nkosi be hu anymore. Court assembly.
If it were to be me, I'll walk out of the church premises. I'll go and buy a bottle of palm oil, powdered pepper and blue, mix it together, come back to the church premises, pour it into the guy's eyes, then I'll pour the rest into and swirl into the lady's wedding dress, After that, I walk out of the church. Well, I'm not aware about any legal action. And if there's any legal action, I don't have time. Already, my heart is already broken. I don't have time to be going around, going to court every day.
Well, if such a thing happens to me, simple, I'll just consult the gods. Period.
Oh, this is strange.
Unbelievable.
I wonder how people think sometimes.
Yeah, you know.
Going to the gods, so promise to marry.
Interesting stuff.
Yes.
But we get to see that this is how the everyday Ghanaian reacts to things.
Exactly.
And things of this nature, especially where they don't know that there's some remedy in the law for them.
True.
Now the question that the viewer at this juncture would ask is, what really is a breach of promise to marry? How does it arise? How does it come about? Is it as a result of just being in a relationship with somebody and backing out when something happens?
Well, it's important to put it into perspective, proper perspective, so we can deal with it for the understanding of everybody. You may look at it from two elements: the issue of promise and then the breach of the promise. What amounts to a promise to marry someone? What amounts to a promise to marry someone can be taken from two main sources: an express promise to marry, and then an implied promise to marry, which can be deduced from the conduct of the person making the promise, we may refer to as the promisor in law. But we want to reduce all the legal jargon so you can understand us better and then know what we are talking about. On the other hand, we can also deduce the idea of a promise to marry from the conduct of the party, not necessarily making an express words or statement that I would marry you, but perhaps by the conduct, by taking you out to town to places where they sell marriage materials, wedding gowns, flowers, window shopping and that. And then even to the extent where you are talking to your pastor about marriage and what it takes to marry and all that, that conduct.
So in simple terms, what you are saying is that verbally and simply saying to somebody that I want to marry you, I desire to be your spouse, and also acting in ways that suggest that this is what you want to do, are the two ways that you could. I also look at it in the Ghanaian context where your family goes to approach their family, the other partner's family, mostly from the man's family to the woman's family, because in Ghana we define marriage to include a relationship between two families and not just the individuals.
Yeah, that's so true, because this whole thing about promise really is a contract. It's an agreement. And this is how we need to also understand it out there. There should be an offer from the man and then an acceptance by the woman.
Must it always be that way from the man to the woman?
Well, in our Ghana,
could be the other way around.
Community.
In contemporary times.
Yes, so far, I haven't heard of one case where the woman has proposed to the man, hello, mister, can you marry me or will you marry me? But let's assume that it comes from the man. So the man makes the offer, the woman then accepts. The emphasis, though, that I think we should place on this is that the offer should be seriously made. The acceptance should also be seriously made, because you have situations where a man may just be playing with you. Oh, that's the girl of my heart. This is the woman that I want to marry. You can't go to court for any redress at all. It has to be seriously made. Like Nuhela said earlier on, you go to the parents, you visit the parents, express to them that I'm interested in your girl. I am going to come sometime to perform the knocking. All these things would then create the promise. So, as you said, after the promise has been created, what happens?
To add to what you said, and the issue about seriously and mutually making promises to each other, then people begin to wonder what would pass for a serious offer and a serious acceptance of marriage. I am thinking that it's different from a case-to-case basis, and that sometimes just holding yourself out in the public, you're together at the mall, you're everywhere for so many years, such that everybody knows that you are with this person. And I mean, conduct like that could buttress any verbal promises you have made to the person.
Oh, yeah, I think so too, because like we said, a promise may be by way of conduct, or by expressly opening your mouth and uttering the word. So I guess same thing. If a case should go to court, the court will look at the totality of the facts and then draw a conclusion that there was a legally binding agreement.
So now we've agreed that they are in a relationship. We've agreed that the man, as you prefer, and as I prefer, it could be from the woman. So one of the parties has offered to marry, and the promise has been established. That you also seriously accepted. How then do we now say, okay, he's breached that promise, or she has breached that promise?
Yeah.
Well, by simply failing or neglecting to act in accordance with the promise, or to carry out with the promise to marry the lady or the man. Mind you, even though the promise may come from the man to the lady, the act of breaching the promise can be from either party. It can be the lady refusing or neglecting to marry the man, or the man refusing to marry the lady.
Exactly.
And this act of refusal or neglecting to do so may be in several forms. Maybe in the fact that he expressly tells her that I won't marry you again, I won't go ahead with the wedding or the marriage. Or, on the other hand, he goes ahead to marry without informing her, and she finds out on her own. Or he sends someone on his behalf to inform her that he's going ahead to marry someone else. So,
Because, you know, again, when the promise is being made, it may be made subject to the occurrence of an event. That, for example, I'm going to marry you on the 25th of December, we will have the wedding or the celebration. And then 25th December comes, nothing happens. He's in breach. Because it was subject to that date on the 25th of December. So when it happens like that, then if the woman is interested, or the man is interested, he may go to court, or she may go to court.
So that breach could also even be as a result of something you anticipate. Considering the way things are going, there's no way he will be able to marry me.
Yes.
But it's also important to indicate that some promises may be made based on some conditions that legally are not right. For instance, where you promise somebody that I'll marry you, but after my wife dies, or I'll marry you after I divorce my wife or my spouse. Since such situations could lead people into doing illegal acts as to trying to, you know, kill or murder the spouse so that that person takes over that place, those kind promises are not valid in law.
They are not. You know, there will be no contract. But then the other thing we need to also note is that if a man promises to marry a woman under customary law, and the man does not marry you for some time and marries another woman, do you know that the man is not in breach?
Absolutely not.
Because customary law marriages are polygamous.
It's also worth mentioning that when you make a promise of marriage to a minor, it's not valid in law. You cannot enforce it if she grows up and decides not to follow through with it. But where the minor grows up and wants and seeks to enforce it, or to go ahead to maybe sue you for disappointing her, that can be done. And where finally it's been established that you are in breach of a promise to marry somebody, what defenses are available? I know there are so many of them, and I know you want to start with that.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Well, you know, there are a number of defenses to an action based on a breach of promise to marry. In other words, let's assume that a woman brings action against a man for not marrying her after promising to marry her. Are there any defenses to the man? In my book on page 2, actually, I have outlined a number of defenses. So if I may quickly just look at some of these defenses. For example, if an action is brought against a man for not marrying a woman, the man can raise the defense of infidelity. You know, the man promises the woman, or they agree to get married at a future date. And then subsequently, the man gets to know that the woman is sleeping around. He may use that as a defense.
And infidelity, how do you prove that?
The proof of
infidelity.
Oh, well, you know, it's very difficult to prove infidelity, but if he will be able to establish it then it will be a good
So we are looking at things like venereal diseases. We're looking at pregnancy, where perhaps you've never had any such relations with a woman.
Yes.
We're looking at
caught in the act.
Yeah, being caught in the act.
But besides that,
Yes.
you know, the issue of infidelity also, because of the difficulty of finding the person in the act, you may deduce that from the conduct of the party. I mean, you found her coming from a man's house or room at dawn. You found her in a hotel. There are certain circumstances that you may say they are compromising position that you find a person, and that may perhaps assist you in establishing the issue of infidelity against.
You are now
the party.
introducing circumstantial evidence, but then it has to be very, very strong, such that
Yes.
the odds are on your side,
Yes.
so that the law would, go with you.
Absolutely.
And then we have fraudulent misrepresentation. Because, a woman may be married. She meets a man and does not disclose to the man that she's already married.
Yes.
And then they enter into an agreement to marry. If subsequently the man discovers that the woman actually told a lie to him, that she was not married, in other words, like they say here, she was available, then the man can use that also as a
I know that there's also the defense of illness, and this is not just any kind of illnesses that are dangerous, illnesses that are dangerous and contagious, and will render the partner or whoever you are leaving incapable of performing.
The person is so sick, like we refer to it in law as bodily infirmity. There's something wrong. And therefore, even if you get married, it will be of no consequence because that person cannot perform his marital obligations. It then will be
in this instance, I think we have to break it down a little more for viewers to understand and come along with us. My mind now goes straight to the issue of or the sickness HIV or AIDS. Definitely, people will be divided on this. I mean, somebody may think that once you are HIV positive, then you cannot perform your marital obligations as they would have wanted you to perform. But I also know that in today's medical advancements, I mean, it's a condition that can be maintained. You can still have children who may not necessarily be infected, among other things. So I don't know what your take is on that.
How do you deal with that? When it comes to AIDS and HIV cases, they are treated slightly differently. And therefore, I believe that if a person was suffering from maybe AIDS or HIV, it would be a good defense if one of them should actually withdraw from the agreement. Because really, how do you get married to someone who is suffering from, especially HIV? AIDS, I'm not so sure, but if it is HIV, then it should be.
This is where I depart from my lecturer in senior, because I believe that I believe that you should not just withdraw from a relationship just because of HIV, because now there are ways you could manage it.
Okay.
There are ways
you see. It's important to point out that it's not just the issue of the disease, but whether to render you incapable of performing your marital duties. What are these marital duties we are talking about here? The idea of having children is a marital obligation.
Totally.
That both parties may agree that they want to have children. Now, if you have HIV, the fact that one party has HIV, another party doesn't have HIV, will make it difficult for them to have children, unless the other one is ready to risk it, to have kids, or else would find other means.
I don't quite agree with you all, because it's not as difficult as it used to be in times past. Like I said earlier, there are medical advancements that now make that possible. What are the duties of a spouse? People talk about sex, they talk about companionship, they talk about support,
cooking.
They talk about cooking, cleaning, and all those in the African context.
Yes.
An HIV positive person with proper management can have kids that are not HIV positive, can still have sex with the spouse, with the rights, protection, can still, do all the other duties. It's just that there will have to be another, some more care taken so that you don't pass the disease on. But I don't see it as a situation that can render somebody incapable of performing his or her marital obligations.
So I guess if a situation should arise or come before the court,
it would be very wonderful, because then
and then the question the court will have to ask is yes, this man is HIV positive. Is he able to perform his marital obligations? If he's able to perform his marital obligations, then HIV will not be a good defense, I guess.
Besides, the case will be looked at upon case-to-case basis.
Yeah.
So there may be some other considerations in addition to the issue of HIV, and whether it is the man who has HIV or is the woman who has HIV. Because if a woman has HIV, she can still have children, and the children don't have HIV. But if a man has HIV, I'm wondering how he's going to have children without them having HIV.
Very well, and also the level of tolerance of the spouse as to how much they are willing to bend over to accommodate the condition. Yes. I'd like to add that it is not a defense to say that perhaps the woman's family does not like you.
Exactly.
Or the man's family does not like you, and for which reason you had to end it. Or to say that, oh, she wouldn't have been happy in the marriage. Or she wasn't even that committed. She didn't love me that much.
Or witchcraft.
Or witchcraft,
or
yeah.
in the family, or this one, she comes from that tribe, she comes from that, what do you call it, town, or whatever. All those ones are really not defenses at all.
It's time for us to go for another quick commercial break to get messages from our sponsors. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. What should I know if I want to buy, lease, or rent property? Get married or divorced? Draft a will, enter into a partnership or contract? What should I know if I've been arrested, abused, defamed, wrongfully dismissed from work? Let's get informed. Let's get liberated. Let's get empowered. Law Express, showing this on every Sunday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on Metro TV. So there are instances where you promise to marry somebody and then the person changes, his or her character. I mean, can bad character become a defense? I think so, but I don't know what your take is on that.
It is. Bad character is a defense to breach of promise to marry. Indeed, when you promise to marry someone and subsequently the person develops some character or portrays characters that you think this would not inure to the smooth cohabitation of both of you, it is good grounds for you to withdraw from the promise to marry. But what is important is what amounts to bad character.
My thinking is opens a big door.
What amounts to bad character? I guess if the person starts hitting you,
abuse,
abuse, there is domestic violence, it should be a good defense. Assuming after the exchange of promises, you get to learn that the man that you're about to marry was convicted of murder some time ago. He served 20 years in the States and he's now back. Can you rely on that bad conduct
from times past?
Yes.
So his historic,
yes.
Well, in my humble opinion, I don't think that is good defense. Because, yes, two things come in here. We're talking about bad character as it exists now and going forward, not bad character as it was in the past. If he has been convicted before and he doesn't show signs of a repetition of those things, I don't think it's good grounds for you to say.
What about if he doesn't tell you at all? I mean, it's different if you say to the woman that
fraudulent misrepresentation. That's a totally different angle of the law. But fraudulent misrepresentation, where he refuses to disclose to you, or he discloses the dishonest part of his life, that, oh yes, he never told you that he did A, B, C, D. Mind you, non-disclosure to some extent can amount to being fraudulent. Because if you
totally appreciate that. I totally get what you're saying, but my point is that whole conscious effort to hide that is what shows that perhaps he intends to go, or that is his nature. So the fraud element is there, as we all know it, but then for consciously and intentionally hiding such important and vital information from somebody you intend to spend your life with, I mean, it just shows that perhaps you are not reformed, perhaps you intentionally want to continue in that line.
Well, to that extent, I may agree with you, but to the extent that the relationship is still ongoing, he may have the opportunity to tell you. We don't meet people and tell them everything about ourselves off the hook. It builds up with time.
This is somebody that you've developed a relationship with to the point that you have promised marriage.
Remember that this promise we're talking about can be implied. So you may be deducing your promise from my conduct and not because I have expressly said I will marry you.
And that is a valid promise.
But you see,
no doubt about that.
You know, all that we are saying here is that we are not saying that you shouldn't go ahead and get married, but
if you decide,
if the other party decides that, you know what, because of your past character, which was so bad, we're not talking of you know, offenses, trivial offenses
like fights,
shoplifting,
you know,
or fighting, or theft, or anything. But we're talking about serious offenses.
Even though seemingly serious offenses may be serious to some people.
Exactly. You know, so if my daughter brought home a guy who has served a 25-year sentence in some American jail, I would say to her, no. I would say, hell no.
Well, gladly enough, your no is to the extent of influencing her decisions.
But
it is you don't really hold the consent for her to marry or not to marry. Remember that's true. The agreement between the two parties, she doesn't require your consent to marry the man. You may only have some influence on her making the decision to marry him or not.
Oh,
I still stand.
Right.
I am perhaps sympathetic to ex-convicts to the point that if the offense for which they were convicted is not so grievous, or if they don't show signs of a repetition, but they are showing signs that they are really reformed, because we must note that prison is to reform a person. Except that, yes, there are exceptional cases in our condition.
Actually, in most cases, people come out hardened. You know, in most cases.
Yes, well, maybe in a Ghanaian situation sometimes, yes, because of our peculiar prison situations, yes.
So I guess we can come to the conclusion then that it will depend on the nature of the offense. Maybe
Absolutely.
You should agree with us.
Absolutely.
It will depend on the nature of the offense, whether the offense was committed after the agreement
that is a great summary. We'll go for a short commercial break to get a message from our sponsors. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Don't move a muscle. It's worth considering, like development in modern times, where people virtually have their entire relationship on Facebook, on Instagram, on WhatsApp. You know, they go to Facebook, they indicate in a relationship with a, you know, a small heart. And then you have pictures, series of pictures of them and whoever they are in a relationship with. And then you wake up one day, you go back to Facebook, and then it's complicated. I'm single. And then the person goes ahead to pull down all the pictures. Can we infer that kind of conduct as maybe a breach of that promise where, for instance, in the background, the person has already promised marriage to the other party?
If there is evidence that in addition to the pictures that have been put up, you know, there are other events have taken place showing that there has been an offer, there has been an acceptance, there has a serious agreement of marriage, then there could be a breach of promise. My thinking is that the withdrawal of the pictures or the removal of the pictures from the, what do you call them?
Facebook,
Facebook,
social media, generally.
And alone will not constitute a breach.
So it has to be backed by some conduct.
Or expressly by spoken words.
Yes. Well, and to even add to it, the issue of Instagram, WhatsApp, and the rest, it also would depend on what is done after that. If you put up the lady's picture on your DP or the man's picture on your DP and you put out the future bride or wedding bells are ringing, and you start all that. Now, what follows? Perhaps you live abroad. The lady lives in Ghana. you have found a way to introduce her to your mom by sending her over to your mom's place. She gets to go there on weekends to help your mom cook. She joins your mom to family funerals, where your mom introduces her out as, oh, this is my son's wife, Kojo's wife to be. And everybody knows that. And she's preparing herself towards it. And all of a sudden you withdraw. That can amount to a promise and a breach of that promise.
Absolutely. There's also this thing that keeps happening, you know, where somebody finds out that her partner or his partner is getting married somewhere, and there they just go get some palm oil, you know, pour it on the bride's clothes. Or they go and disrupt the entire ceremony. They sit there and wait, you know, for the priest to go, like, if anybody has anything against this, and then they stand up. I mean, it's something that happens quite often, such that even the movies depict it so well every now and then.
It's so rampant in Ghana, but it is so wrong. Even if you are married to the man, and you get to know that the man is now having a wedding ceremony at Kumasi, you have no right, even though you may be the lawful wife, you have no right to go there to perform. And therefore, the parties who are celebrating the marriage, it may be void though, can call the police in to arrest those people, because you remember, there is a time that a person can raise an objection.
Yes.
And it's that's why we keep saying that in all these matters, it will be a good idea to consult a lawyer. Because if you do, your lawyer will explain.
And that is the very essence of Law Express, to let you know where your rights accrue.
Exactly.
And when you need some wise counsel, you know, go to a lawyer, talk to the lawyer, let the lawyer, you know, advise you as to what options you have, because every single situation is different in itself. There are just some fine details that, in as much as it may be close to somebody's story, that will make yours different.
Exactly. That is so
well,
true.
this may not be part of our discussion, but it's important to note that where the priest or whoever is conducting the marriage announces that if anyone has something to say, indeed at that stage, the door is not open for objections. That is why notices are placed usually for 21 days ahead of it. And on the day of the wedding, it has no legal basis for you to announce to the gathering that if you have an objection to the wedding, say so, or else hold your peace.
Then that is one announcement that perhaps have to be scrapped from the whole, you know.
Fortunately, some of the churches vary it. I'm a Catholic. My church usually don't do that anymore. But some of them know and they vary it. But, you know, we need to educate the public so they will understand.
Exactly.
I think we should now look at the current case, the scenario that we discussed at the beginning of the show, to see, you know, what we can outline from the lady's case. I prefer to call her the lady because, you know, we are trying to protect her identity and not, you know, make her case or open her up to ridicule, you know.
I think that from the scenario, really, we need to establish, like we spoke about earlier on, whether there was a promise, because that is the premise. Because if there hasn't been a promise, there can't be a breach.
Absolutely.
And if there hasn't been a breach, then you have no basis whatsoever. So I think maybe we need to establish the promise.
I agree that there was indeed a promise, and it was expressed verbally.
Exactly.
Or orally to the woman first. And after that, their family, by conduct, the man went with his family to the woman's family to let them know, you know, their intentions or the intention of their son to take her hand, you know. And so I believe that in totality, it was expressly, like you outlined at the beginning, to show how the promise is made. He said it orally and then by conduct. Don't forget that they also moved in together.
You see, cohabitation.
To the extent that they even began counseling, is that so?
Absolutely. You know, they started with the church to show that they intended.
Expression of the man to marry the woman and the subsequent conduct of the parties is enough to draw the conclusion that there was indeed a promise.
And not just a promise in simple terms, but a promise to marry just her to the exclusion of all others.
Yes.
Because they were looking to have some kind of marriage in the church, which mostly, you know, are like marriage under the ordinance, because they sign.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, they are monogamous.
Exactly.
Marriages. And weren't they looking for wedding rings and wedding gowns?
They actually shopped for, you know, the customary rights, which will start the whole thing.
Exactly. Oh, okay. So there was a promise. You agreed.
I do.
I consensus.
You know. So now that we've pointed out that there was indeed a promise, a valid promise, there was a breach of same. It's important now to go straight to what is there for her. I mean, what can she do in this situation, which was actually the main reason why she came to us.
True.
So hold your thoughts. We will be right back after this commercial break, and then we go into the remedies, or what options that this woman has in this situation. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Stay tuned. So, damages or remedies, whichever way, you know.
Well, I think you're talking too much, Lord. Damages, remedies. What is the available option for this lady whose rights have been injured or who has been affected by the man's conduct? What options? What is available for her? Well, we all discussed earlier on the issue of breach of promise to marry. That's unlike other agreements where you can go to court and then ask the court to grant you an order of specific performance, which in everyday language means the court should compel the other party to discharge his obligation under the agreement.
The court should order the person.
The court should
order the person.
To compel the person. To force the person to follow through with his promise.
Carry through with
the agreement.
In other words, marry her.
Yes. This is not available under the concept of breach of promise to marry.
Yeah, also because, you know, marriage in itself is a contract, and you can force people to go into contractual relations.
Absolutely.
So you cannot force somebody to marry another. So sadly, all that is available is just perhaps some kind of compensation in monetary terms, which we normally reduce to the word damages.
Yes, that's how we refer to it in law.
Yes.
Damages. You know, but simply all that it means is the person who has been disappointed, you know, the court may order that she be given or he be given some amount of money. But then the other issue is, how does the court arrive at the amount of money to be given to the person? In other words, like we say in law, the quantum of damages. How much? What things do the courts take into consideration? You know, I read one case where the man and the woman lived together. They promised they entered into an agreement to get married. The man was transferred to Koforidua or something. The woman followed him. The woman fell pregnant. She had a baby. And then suddenly, for no apparent reason, the man got married to another woman. So the judge then in that case said, depending on each case, in the facts of each case, you know, in this particular instance, in other words, the story I told you, not the scenario yet, but because we are going to get there. But in that particular case, the judge said, look, this woman has got a child. You have reduced her market value. In other words, most men will shun from a woman who has already got a child, you know. She spent a considerable length of time with you, serving you and doing all sorts of things for you. Everybody knew in the village or the town that she was married, even married to this man. So because of that, the woman should be given.
So I'm thinking that maybe it will be useful to say that damages or the money awarded could be categorized into 3 groups.
Yes.
And that is punitive damages, aggravated damages, and compensatory damages. Viewers, don't be so worried, because we're going to go into details as to what they all mean, you know. So what you are talking about could fall into aggravated damages, if I'm right, because then, you know, you have reduced the market value in that there was seduction in it. And in law, when we talk about seduction in this kind of situation, meaning there was sexual activity before the fact of, you know, before marriage.
Yes.
And that was evidenced by a child.
Yes. Yes, that's
and with the punitive damages.
Yes, with punitive damages, I mean, you're referring to damages that seeks to punish the man or seeks to put him in a position where he compensates or pays up for what he has done wrong.
Okay.
Understand? Pays up for the emotional pain you put her through, the inconvenience you put her through.
That sounds more like compensatory to me.
Well, it's
split.
Splits.
Because I see the punitive damages to be more like where the guy is a known rascal. This is what he always does. He disappoints them. But, you know, it's kind of gray in that all these damages are kind of linked in a way.
Absolutely.
So that they have to be picked, and it's particular features that are looked at.
Yes.
And therefore, again, depending on the facts of each particular case, the length of time that they've cohabited, the having the child, all these matters would influence a judge to decide to give X amount. So that, for example, the woman who has a baby from this man is likely to get more because her market value has reduced than the woman who spent 6 months with the guy and with no.
In the issue of damages, the court may also award damages if the woman or the party who is injured can prove to the court that he incurred cost towards the marriage. For instance, you bought items. Which may be the other way around, where the man went in for a list, and if you are marrying someone from a particular region, you would have to buy car, or you may have to buy some clothes, or you may have to buy some GTP or some Holland wax prints, whatever expenditure that you've incurred towards the marriage, which may include bookings of the venue for the marriage and other expenses you incur. If you're able to prove that, it may add up to the quantum of damages you receive from the court.
Yeah, if I may just say this quickly, because you see, the issue of gifts that are given during this period,
of course,
is also very crucial.
Very true.
Because the man promises to marry you, he gives you a ring, a very expensive diamond ring, Bible, and then he buys other things for you.
A car.
Now, maybe a car. And now the woman says, for one reason or the other, that she doesn't want to continue with the agreement, and therefore she withdraws from it. Should the man get the ring back or not? Because, or should the man get the car back? This is a gift which was given to you during the before the
I think it depends on the circumstances surrounding the whole, you know, gifting process. For the ring, mostly we would say maybe it's a promissory ring, and for which reason it's tied to the whole promise of the marriage. So perhaps if that promise cannot, you know, be fulfilled, you may have to return it.
Exactly.
But perhaps with a car, maybe it's just a gift given in good faith, like, I don't want you to suffer so much. So that even if I hadn't made a promise to you, once I agreed to buy you a car, I didn't.
But perhaps the man gave you the car thinking that, oh, we're going to get married in 6 months' time, and this is going to be our family car, or this is the car that will be taken to shop in the market. But
well,
again,
my opinion on issues of gift is, if the gift is towards the performance of the marriage and to make the marriage, make you discharge your obligation as a spouse under the marriage, then perhaps if there's a breach on your side, you would have to return the items.
I agree with you.
That's what I also
But if there are gifts that is meant for the regular, normal, everyday usage or consumption, you can ask for them back.
You can ask her to give you back clothes that's bought for her.
That are not meant, for instance, to be worn on the wedding day or to be worn for your honeymoon, but they are meant for
everyday use.
Absolutely.
But where the other breaches come in play, then that could work. Maybe he contracts some kind of ailment. And all the other, you know, defenses that we mentioned.
Yes.
So,
because, you know, I'm talking of a situation because it has been argued that because breach of promise, this whole principle came from common law. If a man promises to marry you under customary law and he decides no longer to marry you, then you can't go to court. And that you can only go to court if he promised to marry you under the ordinance. And I'm saying here that it doesn't matter the nature of marriage.
A breach of a promise to marry is a breach of a promise to marry. So you take it as it sounds.
Yes.
Doesn't matter how
it doesn't matter at all.
Some people argue that the whole action of breach of promise to marry opens up room for gold diggers to go after rich people. And that even well-mannered girls and well-brought-up women wouldn't want to, air their dirty linen in public. And so if you're well-brought-up, you don't even want to come out to say that I've been jilted and I deserve some money, as compensation, because that is how they reduce it to, that you are broken-hearted and you now go after the person in vengeance to ask for money.
Yes, I guess that's why it has been removed from the statute books in the United Kingdom, because of the so-called gold diggers. And again, that's why here in Ghana, the insistence is on the fact that there was a legal agreement, an agreement which is legally binding was created, so that you can't get all these flimsy and trivial cases.
You don't lead somebody on and then just wake up one day and jilt the person.
And mind you, you would equally have to prove your case like any other civil case for you to succeed.
Yes.
So the test and the standard of proof must be by the same standard someone will prove his ownership of some existence of some contract or
the
any
name
other case.
Of the game is evidence.
Evidence.
You don't just walk there and give a story.
You need to prove it. And the court will exercise.
Finally, it's worth mentioning that the proponents for the removal of this law in those other jurisdictions were mostly feminists and women who thought that in this day and age where there's equality, why should... Yes, they actually led the charge to get it expunged. So it's very important to know it's women who decided that we are independent now, we can take care of ourselves, we don't need any hand-downs from men who have jilted us.
To that is that women thought if monetary compensation was offered as a means of breach of promise to marry, then you are reducing women to an extent material wealth.
Yes.
So it defeats the whole drive for
equality,
the feminist movement,
independence.
And all that. Yes, because what's the point on offering me monetary reward for breach of promise to marry?
Nuhela, there's one thing I have discovered, that there are very few cases that have been reported or actions that have been taken by parties, especially in our Ghanaian society, for damages for breach of promise. And I've been wondering, of course, I know that especially when it's the woman who has been disappointed, she doesn't want to go to court because of fear of stigmatization.
Ridicule.
And ridicule. And men normally don't go to court at all. In fact, for all the cases that I have seen,
it's been women.
Women taking action against men, claiming damages for breach of promise to marry. But why do you think that people really refuse to?
Well, I partly can blame it on ignorance. Some people don't know that they have certain rights under the circumstance if they found themselves in similar situation. People don't know. So perhaps this program would help to educate the public on their rights as far as breach of promise to marry is concerned. Secondly, there's also the issue of pride. The man has left you or the woman has left you.
Damaged ego, man.
So why would you want to be in court for maybe 2-3 months or 6 months or even a year fighting over some monetary compensation? And mind you, the person can actually pay off and say, yes, I have hurt your feelings and I've paid for it and I'll walk away. So you don't want to go through all that situation. So, and we all have this habit in Ghana of Famanyame syndrome. It doesn't matter, let it be, let it be. So we carry on with that. But that is one of the contributions to it. But more importantly, it is the burden on the person alleging. The burden may be so enormous that, sometimes in a relationship, you don't really keep record. You don't keep evidence.
When all is good, I mean,
Yes.
what business you have?
Who really anticipate breach for them to consider that, oh, that one day this matter will come up, so let me keep a receipt?
It's also because of
that.
the nature of this kind of, relationship. I mean, you are in a relationship, it's all rosy. You don't expect the person to back out on you. Yeah. So it's not, you don't plan ahead like what you would do in a business. Yes. I mean, and I always hold that no matter what, most people believe that there's no amount of money that you can put together to compensate them for an injury, because hell has no fury like a woman scorned.
Yes, but it's so true, because, I personally would not bring an action, even though I'm a lawyer. I will not bring an action in court claiming damages for a man because I have been disappointed. No, I wouldn't, because like you said, and you also mentioned it, that why do I want money from him? But people really need to be advised and educated that there are options and there are redresses there. And such cases, really, most of them are held in camera.
I understand that you wouldn't want to go to court, but then sometimes the essence of the damages is to punish the person, to change and not to repeat it.
Exactly. That's so true. That's why, even though I may not, perhaps also because of my age, at this age, I wouldn't go to court.
In as much as there are options available to somebody who has been disappointed in a situation where there was a promise for marriage, you might come across a situation like we have discussed, where this lady was promised marriage and there was a breach, after that. When you come across such a situation, just take it easy, find counsel, find a lawyer. That way you'll be able to get good advice as to what options are available for you. This has been our show, Law Express. Same time next week, we'll be bringing to you more exciting and relevant topics for you to guide you along your course of life. With me today has been lawyer Apang Lamtig and lawyer Mrs. Fredricka Obeng Ahwireng. My name is Nuhela and this has been our show.